The glowing screen of her phone felt like it was burning my retinas, searing words into my brain that I just knew, would haunt my nightmares for years. Can't wait for our next reading session, baby. Last Wednesday was epic. You take my breath away. My breath? My breath was gone, sucked out of my lungs as if a vacuum hose had been jammed down my throat. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the damn phone. Another message, just below it, from this Mark. She told me you were boring in bed. Don't worry, I'm showing her what real passion is. My wife. My Sarah. Talking about me like that? To him? The room started to spin. It was one of those cheap, laminated wood-effect nightstands next to our bed, the one Sarah had picked out, saying it was charming. Now, it felt like the ugliest, most obscene piece of furniture in the world, a silent witness to this obliteration of everything I thought was real. My name is Alex. Or, at least, it was the name Sarah used to whisper when she wasn't, apparently, whispering it to Mark. I'm a graphic designer, a pretty normal guy, I thought. Sarah and we've been married for 7 years. 7 years. Not a lifetime, maybe, but long enough to build something. Long enough to think you know someone. We met in our late 20s, a whirlwind romance that felt like something out of a movie, or so I told myself. She was vibrant, funny, always the life of the party. I was quieter, more reserved, but she said she loved that about me, said I was her anchor. An anchor, right. Maybe more like a convenient rock to tether her boat to while she explored other harbors. Everyone, and I mean everyone, thought we were the golden couple. Our friends, my family, her parents, they'd always say, you two are so perfect together. Goals, that kind of nauseating stuff you see on social media. And the worst part? I believed it. I genuinely, stupidly, believed it. We had the nice suburban house, the 2 cars, the yearly vacation to somewhere sunny. We talked about kids, eventually. It was all comfortable, stable, or so I thought. Looking back now, it's like my entire memory of our life together has been corrupted, like a virus has infected every happy moment, twisting it into something grotesque. Was any of it real? Or was I just the oblivious fool in a play only I didn't have the script for? This book club thing started about 6 months ago. Sarah had always been a reader, or at least, she liked the idea of being a reader. She'd buy books, they'd pile up, half-read. But suddenly, she was all in on this new book club. It's with some girls from yoga, Alex, she'd said, her eyes bright with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen in a while, not directed at me. Anyway, we're going to read all the classics, then debate them. It'll be so intellectually stimulating. Every Wednesday night, like clockwork. She'd get dressed up, not overly so, but nice. Nicer than she dressed for our usual Tuesday night stay-in and watch Netflix routine. Her perfume would linger in the hallway after she left, a scent that now makes me physically sick. I didn't question it. Why would I? I work late sometimes. I have my own hobbies. I thought it was good for her to have her own thing. Have fun, honey, I'd say, pecking her on the cheek, smelling that perfume, never once imagining it was a prelude to this. There were subtle shifts, of course. Hindsight is a cruel, glaring spotlight, isn't it? She started guarding her phone more. It used to lie around, face up. Then it was always face down, or in her purse. She changed the passcode, said it was for security reasons after a colleague had her phone hacked. Liar. She'd come home from these book club meetings flushed, a little giddy, sometimes a bit tipsy. Debate got heated. She'd laugh. Or Brenda brought this amazing wine. Brenda. I wonder if Brenda even exists. Or is Brenda short for Mark is banging your wife? Reconsider every decision? She'd be late, sometimes. Oh, you know how it is when the discussion gets going. We just lost track of time. Lost track of time. I'll bet they did. The intimacy between us, it hadn't died, not completely, but it had become perfunctory. Like a chore she was dutifully performing. I'd put it down to stress, to tiredness. We're all human, right? Relationships have ebbs and flows. God, I was such an idiot. I made excuses for her for us. I wanted to believe the fairy tale so badly, I was willing to ignore the dragon setting fire to the pages. Tonight, though, tonight was different. She left for her book club around 7, looking particularly radiant, wearing this new silky-looking top I hadn't seen before. Big discussion on The Great Gatsby tonight, she chirped, all about unattainable desires. The irony is so thick, I could choke on it. Around 10, I was just pottering around, tidying up, when I saw her phone on the nightstand. This was unusual. She never left her phone. Never. My heart gave a weird little thump. A flicker of something. Not quite suspicion. Not yet. More like a disquieting hum beneath the surface of my denial. I told myself she'd just forgotten it in a rush. But the hum grew louder. I picked it up. It was locked, of course. I knew her old passcode, the one she'd used for years, our anniversary. On a whim, a truly sick, gut-wrenching whim, I tried it. Incompatible passcode. Then, I don't know why, maybe it was the universe giving me a sledgehammer to the face, I tried her birthday. Click. It opened. My stomach dropped to my shoes. Why would she change it to something so simple, unless she thought I'd never, ever try? Or maybe she wanted to be caught. No, that's giving her too much credit, too much complexity. This wasn't some elaborate cry for help. This was just cheap, sordid betrayal. Her messages were right there on top. A chat with Mark B. Not even a clever code name. Mark B. I tapped on it, my finger trembling. And there it was. The devastation. Scroll after scroll. Weeks of it. Months, maybe. Plans to meet. Explicit descriptions of their encounters. Her complaining about me. Me. Alex is so predictable. He has no idea. God, I need you, Mark. Wednesday can't come soon enough. Each word was a nail hammered into my heart. They talked about their chapters, their discussions, clearly their code for their trysts. They'd even joked about the books they were supposedly reading. Finished War and Peace last night, darling. He'd texted after one particularly late Wednesday. More like we started our own war, and peace is the last thing on my mind when I'm with you, she'd replied, with a string of those kissy face emojis that now looked like demonic little smirks. The details. Oh, God, the details. Where they met. Sometimes a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, sometimes, and this twisted the knife deeper, his apartment. His place is so much nicer than ours, one of her texts read. Nicer than the home I worked my ass off to provide for us? The home she supposedly loved? The sheer contempt in her words, the casual cruelty, it was breathtaking. I felt the blood drain from my face, then rush back in a furious, hot wave. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to throw her phone through the goddamn window. But I just stood there, frozen, rereading the vile messages, each one a fresh stab. There was one from just this afternoon. Can't wait to critique your prose tonight, handsome. Wear that blue shirt I like. That blue shirt. I felt like I was going to throw up. All the intellectual stimulation was happening between the sheets, not between the pages of some dusty classic. The book club. Her special, sacred Wednesday nights. It was all a lie. A carefully constructed, elaborate lie designed to make me, her husband, the biggest fool in the county. Every smile, every I love you from the past 6 months now felt like ash in my mouth. How could she do this? How could she look me in the eyes, day after day, knowing she was betraying me in the most intimate, devastating way possible? The pain was a living thing, clawing at my insides, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. It was a physical agony, a crushing weight on my chest. My world, the world I thought I knew, had just imploded, leaving nothing but smoke and ruins. And then, the kicker. A picture. He'd sent her a picture. Just his shirtless torso, but it was clearly in a bedroom that wasn't ours. And her reply. Missing this view already. Counting the minutes until our next literary salon. You make me feel alive, Mark. Truly alive. Alive. What did that make me? The Walking Dead? The chump who paid the bills and warmed the other side of the bed? I sank down onto the edge of our bed, the phone still clutched in my hand like a venomous snake I couldn't bring myself to drop. The silence in the house was deafening, amplifying the roaring in my ears. She was due back any minute. The book club, usually wrapped up by 11, or so she claimed. What was I going to do? What could I possibly say? The man she married, the perfect husband, felt like he'd just been unceremoniously executed. And in his place? A raw, gaping wound of a man, trembling with a rage and a sorrow so profound, I didn't recognize myself. The love I had for her, which just minutes ago felt like the bedrock of my life, was rapidly curdling into something dark and poisonous. I could hear her car pull into the driveway, the crunch of tires on gravel, the click of her unlocking the car door. Each sound was like a drumbeat, marching me towards a confrontation I wasn't ready for, but one that was now terrifyingly, unavoidably, here. The front door opened downstairs. Alex? Honey, I'm home. Her voice called out, cheerful, oblivious. The sound of it, so normal, so fake, made my blood run cold. She was about to walk into the wreckage of her own making, and I, holding the evidence of her treachery, was waiting. Her footsteps on the stairs were light, unburdened. The same footsteps I used to find endearing, a familiar rhythm in our shared life. Now, they sounded like the approach of a stranger, an enemy. She appeared in the doorway of our bedroom, a bright, almost theatrical smile plastered on her face. "Oh, hi, honey. You're still up," she said, tossing her purse onto the chair by the vanity. She was still wearing that silky top, the one I now knew was for him. The sight of it sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The words were choked in my throat, a tangled mess of fury and despair. I just looked at her, holding up her phone, the screen still illuminated with their sordid exchanges. Her smile faltered, then vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then dawning horror as she realized what I was holding, what I must have seen. Her face went pale, a sickly, chalky white under the warm lamplight of the bedroom. "Alex, what are you doing with my phone?" she stammered, her voice suddenly small, stripped of its earlier confidence. "Your book club seems intense, Sarah," I managed to croak out, my voice raspy, unrecognizable even to myself. Lots of very detailed, literary analysis with a Mr. Mark B. The color completely drained from her face now. She looked like a cornered animal. I don't know what you're talking about," she tried, the denial weak, pathetic. "You went through my phone? How could you? That's a complete invasion of my privacy." The audacity of it, to try and turn this on me, to feign outrage when she was the one who had shattered every vow, every shred of trust we ever had. It was like a switch flipped inside me. The shock, the grief, it was still there, a burning inferno in my chest, but a cold, hard anger was crystallizing around it. "Privacy?" I echoed, my voice gaining a dangerous edge I didn't know I possessed. "You want to talk about privacy, Sarah? After I read about how boring I am in bed? After I read your plans to meet your lover? After I see pictures you've exchanged? What about my privacy? What about my dignity? What about the 7 years of my life you've just spat on?" I was on my feet now, advancing towards her, the phone still held out like an accusation. She flinched, taking a step back. "Alex, please, it's not what you think," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. They looked like crocodile tears to me now, tools of manipulation she'd probably honed to perfection. It just happened. "Mark, he's just a friend from yoga. We just connected." "Connected?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You call screwing him in cheap motels and his apartment connecting? You call telling him intimate details about our marriage, about me, connecting? What book were you discussing tonight, Sarah? The Art of Deception? How to Ruin Your Marriage in 6 Months or Less?" My voice was rising, the dam of my composure finally breaking. The pain was still there, a savage beast tearing at me, but the adrenaline of confrontation was pumping through my veins. She crumpled then. The fight, the defiance, it just seeped out of her. She sank onto the edge of the bed, our bed, the irony wasn't lost on me, and started to sob. Real sobs, it seemed, racking her body. But I felt nothing. No pity, no compassion. Just a vast, aching emptiness where my love for her used to be. "I'm so sorry, Alex," she wailed, her face buried in her hands. "I never meant to hurt you. It was a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake. It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" I repeated, incredulous. 6 months, Sarah. 6 months of lies, of sneaking around, of betraying me every single Wednesday night, and probably other nights too, who knows. You meticulously planned this. You looked me in the eye and lied, every single day. How can you say it didn't mean anything? The words, "Mark makes me feel alive," echoed in my mind, a cruel counterpoint to her pathetic excuses. She looked up, her face streaked with mascara, her eyes pleading. He listened to me. Things have been distant between us, Alex. For a while now. I was lonely. Lonely. I shot back. "So instead of talking to your husband, the man who vowed to love and cherish you, you go find comfort in the arms of another man? You make me the villain in your sordid little drama? You think that justifies this?" "There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that justifies what you did." I was pacing now, the confines of the bedroom feeling too small, too suffocating. I felt like I was going to explode. The argument raged on for what felt like hours. Her excuses became more desperate, her pleas more frantic. She tried to touch me, to hold my hand, but I recoiled as if burned. It was just sex, she tried at one point, as if that somehow made it better. It didn't mean anything emotionally. I just stared at her, the sheer idiocy of that statement rendering me speechless for a moment. The text proved otherwise. "That you take my breath away," The "I need you" mark. Lies upon lies. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. The sight of her, the sound of her voice, it was all unbearable. "Get out," I said, my voice flat, devoid of the earlier rage, now just chillingly calm. She stopped crying, her eyes widening in shock. "What?" "Alex, no, please. Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll end it with Mark, right now. I'll do anything. Fix this." I let out another humorless laugh. "Sarah, you took a sledgehammer to this. There's nothing left to fix. It's broken. Shattered. Irreparably. I want you out. Tonight." Panic flashed across her face. "Tonight? But where will I go? It's late." "I don't care where you go, Sarah," I said, the coldness in my own voice surprising me. "Go to Mark's. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to have you for an unscheduled reading session. Or go to Brenda's, if she even exists. Frankly, my dear," and I couldn't resist the Gatsby-esque echo, "I don't give a damn." The fight seemed to drain out of her, replaced by a dawning realization that I was serious. This wasn't a tantrum. This was an ending. She started to plead again, to bargain, but my resolve was like iron. The love had died, and in its place was a steely determination to protect myself from any more of her poison. I went to the closet, pulled out a suitcase, and threw it on the bed. "Pack whatever you need for tonight. You can arrange to get the rest of your things later." She just stared at the suitcase, then at me, her expression a mixture of disbelief and despair. "You can't be serious, Alex. After everything, you're just throwing me out. You threw us out, Sarah, the moment you decided your book club was more important than your marriage. The moment you chose him over me. Now, please, pack. I can't stand to look at you a second longer." Slowly, mechanically, she started to put a few things into the suitcase. Clothes, toiletries. Her movements were jerky, uncoordinated. The silence in the room was thick with unspoken accusations, with the ghosts of what used to be. Every now and then, she'd let out a small sob, but I hardened my heart. I had to. This was survival. While she packed, my mind was racing. This wasn't just about kicking her out for the night. This was about untangling my life from hers. The house, the finances, everything. The word divorce loomed large and terrifying, but also strangely liberating. I needed to protect myself. I needed to understand my rights. As soon as she was gone, I knew my first call would be to my friend Ben, who had been through a messy divorce a few years ago. He'd know a good lawyer. She finally zipped up the small suitcase, her face tear-stained and puffy. She looked defeated, pathetic. A far cry from the vibrant, confident woman who had left for her book club just a few hours earlier. "Alex, please," she whispered one last time, her hand reaching out, then falling back to her side when I didn't respond. I walked to the bedroom door and held it open. "Goodbye, Sarah." She hesitated. Then, with a final, broken look at me, she picked up her suitcase and walked out of the bedroom, out of my life. I listened to her footsteps descend the stairs, much heavier this time. The front door opened, then closed with a soft, final click. And then, silence. A profound, deafening silence. I stood there in the middle of my bedroom, the scene of so much betrayal, and a wave of desolation washed over me. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but now it was mixed with a profound, gut-wrenching sorrow. It was truly over. But as the initial shockwaves began to subside, something else started to stir within me, a cold, hard resolve. She thought I was boring, predictable. She thought she could play me for a fool. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. I picked up my phone, my hand surprisingly steady now, and scrolled through my contacts. "Ben." He answered on the third ring. "Ben," I said, my voice still rough. "I need that lawyer's number. The really good one. The shark." A plan, dark and vengeful, was beginning to form in the shattered remnants of my heart. She wanted to see what real passion was? Oh, I'd show her passion. The passionate destruction of everything she thought she could get away with. The game was on. The days that followed Sarah's ignominious exit were a blur of raw emotion and grim determination. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. My mind a relentless replay reel of her texts, her lies, her tear-streaked face as she left. But beneath the agony, a cold fire was burning. Ben had come through immediately, connecting me with a divorce lawyer named Ms. Diane Holloway, a woman whose reputation as a ball-breaker was, I soon learned, thoroughly deserved. Our first meeting was like a strategy session for a war I never wanted to fight, but one I was now determined to win. "She thinks you're a pushover, Mr. Henderson?" Miss Holloway had said, her eyes sharp and assessing over the rim of her glasses. "Good. Let her keep thinking that. It'll make this all the more satisfying. Satisfying. That word resonated with a part of me I didn't know existed, a part that craved not just separation, but a reckoning. The first step was gathering more evidence. While the texts on Sarah's phone were damning, Ms. Holloway wanted an airtight case, something to leave Sarah with absolutely no leverage, no room to maneuver, no chance to play the victim. People like your wife, Mr. Henderson, she'd explained, her tone devoid of sympathy, they're experts at rewriting history. We need to ensure the original manuscript is preserved, in all its ugly detail. So, I delved deeper. With Sarah gone, I had access to our shared computer, her old tablet she'd left behind. It was sickening, like picking through the debris of a plane crash, but necessary. I found more. Deleted emails, foolishly left in the trash folder, with Mark B., whose full name, Mark Bronson, I quickly discovered through a little social media sleuthing. He was a smarmy sales guy from a neighboring town, someone we'd met peripherally at a charity gala once, an insignificant face in the crowd that had now become the co-author of my personal hell. There were photos, too, backed up to a cloud account she'd forgotten about. Selfies of her and Mark, grinning, looking disgustingly pleased with themselves, in hotel rooms, even one with the distinctive wallpaper of his living room, confirming her texts. Each discovery was another twist of the knife, but it also solidified my resolve. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated, long-term campaign of deceit. Sarah, in the meantime, had apparently holed up with a friend, not Mark, interestingly. He, it turned out, was married. Of course he was. The cliché was almost laughable if it wasn't so devastating. Her calls started coming. Dozens a day. Pitiful voicemails filled with apologies, pleas for forgiveness, declarations that she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Alex, please, I miss you. I miss us. I'll go to therapy. We can go to therapy. I'll do anything to fix this. Mark meant nothing, I swear. He was just an escape. An escape. As if our marriage was a prison she needed to flee. I let every call go to voicemail. Ms. Holloway had advised minimal contact, and honestly, hearing her voice just stoked the fires of my anger. The plan Ms. Holloway and I devised was simple but brutal. We'd hit her where it hurt, leveraging her own infidelity to ensure a swift and favorable settlement. Our state was a no-fault divorce state, but egregious behavior could certainly influence spousal support and asset division, especially when marital assets had been squandered on an affair, and I found receipts. Hotel stays, expensive dinners with Mark, gifts she'd bought him, all paid for from our joint account. The book club was proving to be a very expensive extracurricular activity for her. The day we served her the divorce papers was, I admit, a day I had been anticipating with a grim sort of satisfaction. Ms. Holloway arranged for the process server to deliver them while Sarah was at her part-time job at a boutique clothing store, a job she'd always treated more like a hobby, a way to get discounts, because my income had always supported our lifestyle. I wasn't there, of course, but Ms. Holloway got a full report. Sarah had apparently burst into tears in front of customers and her manager, causing a scene, demanding to know how I could be so cruel. Cruel. The irony was richer than anything she'd ever claimed to be reading in her damn book club. Her reaction to the divorce papers was immediate and explosive. My phone blew up with frantic texts, no longer just pleading, but accusing. You're trying to destroy me. This is all your fault for being so distant. Mark is nothing. You're making this into a bigger deal than it is. The gaslighting was truly astonishing. But I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to Ms. Holloway, who cataloged it all as further evidence of Sarah's instability and unwillingness to take responsibility. The real confrontation, the climax of this particular tragic act, came a week later, at Ms. Holloway's office, for our first mediation session. Sarah was there with a hairy-looking legal aid lawyer who seemed utterly out of his depth. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, her expensive clothes looked rumpled, and the confident, radiant woman I once knew was replaced by a pale, trembling mess. For a fleeting second, a tiny sliver of pity pricked at me, but then I remembered the texts, the lies, the sheer contempt she'd shown me, and the pity vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Ms. Holloway laid out our terms. They were, to put it mildly, uncompromising. I was keeping the house. It was primarily funded by an inheritance from my grandparents, a fact Ms. Holloway had meticulously documented. We would split the remaining liquid assets, but I was demanding reimbursement for every penny of marital funds she'd squandered on Mark Bronson and her fictitious book club. Spousal support? Absolutely not. Your client, Mrs. Henderson, Ms. Holloway stated, her voice like chipped ice, has demonstrated a profound lack of good faith and has, by her own actions, forfeited any claim to ongoing support. She is young, educated, and perfectly capable of supporting herself. Perhaps she can finally put that art history degree to use. Sarah just stared, aghast. You can't do this, Alex. She finally choked out, turning to me, her eyes wild. This is our life. You can't just take it all away. I'm not taking anything away that wasn't already poisoned by your actions, Sarah, I replied, my voice steady, calm. I was surprised by my own composure. It was as if the storm inside me had finally passed, leaving behind a quiet, resolute landscape. You made your choices. These are the consequences. Her lawyer tried to argue, to negotiate, but Ms. Holloway systematically dismantled every one of his points, presenting copies of the texts, the photos, the credit card statements detailing Sarah's illicit expenditures. With every piece of evidence laid on the table, Sarah seemed to shrink further into her chair. The color drained from her face as she saw the full extent of what I knew, what I could prove. There was no room for denial, no space for her manipulative tears to work their magic. She was utterly, comprehensively exposed. And then there's the matter of Mr. Bronson, Ms. Holloway continued, dropping her next bombshell. It has come to our attention that Mr. Bronson is also married. We have no intention of involving his wife, unless your client chooses to make this process more difficult than it needs to be. A messy, public court battle, airing all this dirty laundry, wouldn't be pleasant for anyone, would it, Mrs. Henderson? Especially not for Mr. Bronson's career or his own marriage. It was a calculated move, a touch of ruthlessness that made Sarah physically flinch. The threat, though unspoken, was clear: cooperate, or this gets much, much uglier for everyone involved in your little charade. That was the breaking point. Sarah buried her face in her hands and let out a strangled sob. Okay, she whispered, her voice muffled. Okay, fine. Just make it stop. Her lawyer looked relieved, if a little defeated. The rest of an afternoon was spent going through the details, signing papers. Sarah barely spoke, just nodded or whispered, yes, when required. The fight was gone. All that remained was the hollow shell of the woman who had so arrogantly believed she could have it all, her dutiful husband at home and her thrilling lover on the side. As she signed the settlement agreement, a document that essentially stripped her of the comfortable life she'd taken for granted, I saw a single tear roll down her cheek and splash onto the paper. It wasn't a tear of anger or even sadness. It looked like a tear of profound, dawning regret. The kind of regret that settles deep in your bones and stays there. When it was all over, she looked at me, her eyes filled with a desolation that was almost painful to witness, even for me. I really messed up, didn't I, Alex? She said, her voice barely audible. I met her gaze, holding it for a long moment. There was no triumph in me, no desire to gloat. Just a vast, weary emptiness and the faint, flickering ember of a future I now had to build on my own. Yes, Sarah, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You did. More than you'll ever know. I didn't say I forgive you, because I didn't. Not then. Maybe not ever. But I also didn't say I hate you, because in that moment, what I felt was closer to a profound indifference. She had become irrelevant. I stood up, nodded to Ms. Holloway, and walked out of the office without looking back. The air outside felt cleaner, fresher, as if I just shed an immense weight. Sarah had lost almost everything. Her marriage, her home, her financial security, and, I suspected, her lover, who would likely run for the hills once he realized the affair was no longer a secret thrill but a messy liability. As for me, I had lost my marriage, my trust, my illusions. But I had gained something too: my freedom, my self-respect, and a grim understanding of what I was capable of enduring. The scars were deep, and I knew they would take a long time to heal, but as I walked away from that law office, I felt, for the first time in months, a flicker of something that might, eventually, resemble peace. The main battle was over. Now, the long process of rebuilding could begin. 1.5 years. 18 months. That's how long it took for the dust to truly settle, for the raw, gaping wound of Sarah's betrayal to begin to scar over into something manageable, something that didn't ache with every breath. Life, as they say, goes on, often in ways you never expect. The divorce was finalized relatively quickly after that brutal mediation session. Sarah, true to her word, or perhaps just broken and out of options, didn't contest anything further. She signed the papers, took her drastically reduced share of our assets, and disappeared from my immediate orbit. For the first few months, I'd hear snippets about her through the grapevine, mutual acquaintances who hadn't quite decided which side to take, or those who just loved a bit of drama. Apparently, Mark Bronson, her epic lover, had indeed bolted the moment things got real. His own wife, I later heard, found out anyway. Small towns have a way of circulating secrets like wildfire, and he ended up in his own messy divorce. His career as a flashy sales guy taking a significant hit when his personal life imploded so publicly. Poetic justice, I suppose, though I found I didn't take much satisfaction in it. His downfall was just a sideshow to Sarah's. Sarah, from what I gathered, had a rough time. She moved into a tiny apartment in a less desirable part of town, a far cry from the comfortable suburban home she'd so carelessly discarded. The part-time boutique job became a full-time necessity, and the art history degree Ms. Holloway had so sarcastically referenced remained unused. She reportedly struggled financially, emotionally. There were whispers of her trying to date again, but nothing seemed to stick. The vibrant, confident woman had been replaced by someone haunted, someone diminished. A couple of times, late at night, usually after I assumed she'd had a few drinks, I'd get these long, rambling emails. They were a pathetic cocktail of apologies, self-pity, and attempts to rewrite history to somehow make her actions seem less monstrous. I was lost, Alex. I didn't know who I was. You were always so good, maybe too good, and I didn't appreciate it. I never replied. Miss Holloway had advised against it, and honestly, what was there to say? Her words were empty, just echoes in the ruins she had created. I'd read them, feel a faint twinge of something, pity, perhaps, or just the ghost of past pain, and then I'd delete them. She was a chapter closed, a book I had no desire to ever reopen. As for me, the journey was different. The first few months after she left were bleak. The house felt enormous, suffocatingly silent. Every corner held a memory, now tainted. I threw myself into work, into therapy. My therapist, a kind, no-nonsense woman, helped me unpack the grief, the anger, the profound sense of inadequacy Sarah's affair had instilled in me. It was hard work, painful work, like meticulously picking shards of glass out of a wound. But slowly, gradually, I began to heal. I started reclaiming my life, my space. I redecorated the bedroom, painting over the charming yellow Sarah had chosen with a calm, cool gray. I sold the silky top she'd worn that last night, along with a lot of her other belongings she'd eventually, and meekly, arranged to collect, donating the money to a women's shelter, an irony that wasn't lost on me. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had genuinely been there for me, offering quiet support rather than salacious questions. Ben, especially, was a rock. We started going to the gym together, something I'd never had much time for before. I started hiking on weekends, finding a strange solace in the silence of nature, in the physical exertion. I discovered I actually enjoyed my own company, something I hadn't realized when I was so wrapped up in us. My work, which had always been a source of pride, flourished. Without the constant low-level stress of a dying marriage, without the drain of Sarah's manufactured dramas, I found a new focus, a new creativity. I even got a promotion, a significant one. About a year after the divorce, on a whim, I adopted a dog from a local shelter, a scruffy terrier mix I named Gus. He became my shadow, my confidant, a warm, furry presence that filled the silence in the house with happy yaps and the click-clack of his paws on the hardwood floors. He didn't care if I was boring or predictable. He just wanted walks, ear scratches, and the occasional dropped piece of bacon. Love? Romance? That was a path I approached with extreme caution. The idea of trusting someone that intimately again was terrifying. But time, as it does, softened the sharp edges of that fear. I met someone. Her name is Chloe. We met, ironically enough, at a book club, a real one, this time, focused on gritty crime novels, organized by a colleague. Chloe is smart, funny, independent, and refreshingly honest. She knows my story, not in all its sordid detail, but the broad strokes. She understands the scars, and she doesn't try to erase them, but rather, accepts them as part of who I am. It's slow, it's steady, and it feels real, in a way my marriage to Sarah, in hindsight, never truly did. There's a quiet respect, a mutual admiration, a comfortable ease that I now recognize as far more valuable than the dramatic, performative passion Sarah had chased. One Saturday morning, about 2 years after D-Day, Divorce Day, as I'd morbidly come to call it, I was at a local farmer's market with Gus. It was a bright, sunny day. I was laughing at something Gus did when I looked up and saw her. Sarah. She was alone, carrying a couple of sad-looking plastic bags. She looked older, tired. The spark, the vibrancy that had once captivated me, was gone, extinguished. She saw me at the same moment. Her eyes widened, and a flicker of something, shame, regret, crossed her face. For a second, I felt my stomach clench, a phantom limb of old pain. But then, it passed. I just looked at her, a woman I once loved more than life itself, a woman who had nearly destroyed me, and I felt nothing. A vast, calm indifference. She started to walk towards me, a hesitant, hopeful expression on her face. "Alex," she said, her voice soft. Gus, bless his territorial little heart, let out a low growl. I put my hand on his head to calm him. "Sarah," I replied, my tone polite, neutral, like I was addressing a distant acquaintance. "You look good," she said, her eyes scanning me, taking in the changes, perhaps. I hear you're doing well." "I am," I said simply. No need to elaborate, no need to rub it in. My life spoke for itself. An awkward silence hung between us. She shifted her weight, clutching her bags. I just wanted to say again, I'm sorry, Alex. For everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope one day maybe." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and I saw not the monster who betrayed me, but just a flawed, broken person who had made terrible choices and was now living with the consequences. And in that moment, I realized I had forgiven her. Not for her sake, but for mine. Forgiving her meant I was no longer tethered to the pain she had caused. "I hope you find some peace, Sarah," I said, and I meant it. Then, I gave Gus a gentle tug on his leash. "Come on, boy. Let's go." I walked away, Chloe's favorite artisanal bread in my bag, Gus trotting happily beside me, not looking back. Sarah didn't try to follow. I didn't feel triumph, or anger, or even sadness. I just felt free. Looking back on that whole nightmare, I realized it was a brutal, agonizing education. It taught me about the depths of deceit people are capable of, but it also taught me about my own resilience, my own capacity for survival, and, eventually, for healing. Trust is a fragile thing, easily broken, and incredibly hard to rebuild. But I learned that the most important trust you can have is in yourself. Trust that you can weather the storms. Trust that you deserve honesty and respect. Trust that even after the darkest night, the sun will eventually rise again. My life isn't a dramatic, sensational novel anymore. It's quieter, simpler, and infinitely more precious. And that, I've come to realize, is a story worth living. And that brings us to the end of today's story. Thank you so much for tuning in. I truly hope to see you again for more fascinating tales ahead. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our next adventure. See you soon.